When grieving son Michael Turner discovered his father's kidneys were missing after a routine autopsy, he uncovered a terrifying truth. A fake forensic team, led by the vanished American surgeon Dr. Lance Meyer, had been harvesting organs from the dead across the UK, under the cover of legitimacy. As whistleblower Erin Calloway risked her life to expose the operation, and FBI agent Marcus Hale chased shadows across borders, one chilling question remained unanswered. How many more bodies were silently emptied while the world looked away? Welcome to the darkest crime you've never heard of. In early 2018, the quiet city of Birmingham carried its usual air of cloudy skies and unspoken grief. But beneath the surface of routine funerals and grieving families, something deeply unnatural was unfolding. Michael Turner, a 36-year-old electrician, stood silently over his father's casket, his mind numbed not only by sorrow but by a question that refused to leave. Why did his father's torso feel different when they prepared him for the final prayers? He remembered lifting his father's body with the help of the funeral staff. A subtle shift in weight, an unnatural hollowness that settled like a stone in Michael's gut. He didn't want to say it out loud. It felt wrong, disrespectful even. But the unease never left. His father, Frank Turner, had died suddenly at home. A suspected stroke. It was tragic, yes, but not unexpected for a 72-year-old man. What didn't make sense was the long delay in returning the body. MediTrace Diagnostics, the private forensics firm contracted for the post-mortem, had taken over a week. No explanation, no apology, just silence, followed by a neatly sealed report filled with medical jargon Michael couldn't understand. In the days that followed the funeral, grief took a strange shape. Instead of fading, it sharpened. Every memory of Frank's final moments came back distorted, wrapped in suspicion. One morning, Michael couldn't take it anymore. He drove across the city to a private pathologist, willing to pay anything for peace of mind. A second examination was performed, and the results were horrifying. Frank Turner's kidneys were missing. Not damaged or diseased. Gone, surgically removed with precision, with the incisions sealed so expertly they were almost invisible. The pathologist stared at Michael with disbelief, unsure of what to say. For a moment, the world blurred. Michael couldn't breathe. His father had been dissected like a lab rat. His organs stolen and no one had noticed. Or worse, no one cared. Michael reported it to the authorities. He expected outrage, urgency, some sense of justice. Instead, he was met with slow, uninterested questions and a tone that suggested he was being dramatic. No investigation was opened. The paperwork from MediTrace appeared flawless. There were no signs of malpractice on the surface. As Michael sat in the police station's cold waiting area, staring at the stained walls and buzzing ceiling lights, he felt something inside him break, not just from grief, but betrayal. His father had trusted the system, and the system had gutted him without remorse. What Michael didn't know was that his story wasn't unique. Across Birmingham, and eventually far beyond, it was happening again and again. Quiet removals, unexplained delays, bodies returned with secrets buried beneath their skin. No one talked. No one questioned. Until now. And as Michael sat in his car outside the funeral home, gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white, one thought pulsed through his mind louder than his heartbeat. This wasn't just theft. It was desecration. And someone, somewhere, was making a profit out of death. In a sweltering corner of Houston, Texas, the walls of a once promising surgical clinic sat abatted. Windows boarded, the sign stripped clean. But inside those walls, the silence still echoed with memories of dark ambition. Dr. Lance Meyer had once been a rising name in transplant medicine. Skilled, charismatic, even called a miracle worker by patients. But beneath that surface was a man twisted by greed, whose fascination with control turned into something far more dangerous. 3 years before the first kidney disappeared in the UK, Lance's world collapsed in the US. He'd been under investigation for unauthorized procedures and unethical experiments. There were whispers, patients vanishing from records, organs unaccounted for. When the Texas Medical Board launched a surprise raid, they found surgical tools hidden in drywall compartments and refrigerated containers with no corresponding patient files. But they didn't find him. Dr. Meyer had vanished just hours before, leaving behind a city stunned and a system embarrassed. No one truly knew where he went. Some believed he fled to Mexico. Others thought he was dead. But Meyer was very much alive, and he was angry. Angry at a system he believed had abandoned him, despite everything he had given. He didn't feel shame. He felt superior. In his mind he was just playing a more efficient game, one where organs didn't rot on waiting lists, and bureaucracy didn't decide who lived or died. Hiding under forged documents, Meyer resurfaced in Eastern Europe under the name Dr. Emil Rausen. There, in a rundown clinic outside Sofia, Bulgaria, he met Nico Alvarez, a bitter tech dropout from Baltimore, who'd been blacklisted from several hospital systems for manipulating data logs. Nico was brilliant but unstable. Meyer saw in him a partner, someone who could make systems bend and records vanish. Together they built something new, an idea that would grow darker with each passing day. Later, a third member joined. Sandra Doyle, a former surgical nurse from New York, was fired after an overdose was found in her locker. But she didn't crumble. She drifted through underground networks, selling supplies and secrets. She had scars of her own, failures, losses, and a deep need to matter again. Meyer offered her not just money, but purpose. In a dimly lit room in Prague, with surgical schematics spread out across a dusty table, they formed the foundation of a global plan, one that would disguise illegal organ harvesting under the clean, clinical mask of forensic medicine. Mobile units would be built, contracts would be secured under the guise of cost-saving partnerships. They wouldn't need to steal from the living, they'd take from the forgotten dead. It was all clinical on the surface, but in their hearts, something deeper stirred. Meyer wasn't just building an operation, he was crafting vengeance. Every document forged, every name faked, every cold surgical cut was a message. You tried to erase me. Now watch me erase the line between life and profit. And as they booked flights to the UK under new names, a dark chapter was just beginning to take shape. The van pulled up quietly outside the hospice, its white surface clean, sterile, unassuming. On its side, the logo of MediTrace Diagnostics gleamed beneath the dim morning light, a symbol that now meant something far more sinister than support. Inside, everything was immaculate. Surgical trays were perfectly aligned. The smell of alcohol disinfectant masked the truth. Sandra Doyle adjusted her gloves and glanced at the chart. Another body, another routine call. She told herself it was just protocol. Just another job. But sometimes, in the stillness of dawn, a flicker of something more human tried to surface, quickly pushed down by years of bitterness and resolve. Their targets were always the same. Isolated. Unclaimed. The overlooked. In this case, it was a 79-year-old woman named Edna. No known relatives. Died peacefully in her sleep. A lonely ending, unnoticed by the world. Perfect. Sandra's fingers trembled slightly as she lifted the sheet, not from guilt, but from the cold. That's what she told herself anyway. Her hands had done this more times than she could count. Yet each time she closed a chest cavity, it felt like she was sealing away a piece of herself too. Outside, Nico Alvarez monitored the logistics from a laptop on the passenger seat. His screen flickered with false death reports and mirrored hospital records. One click, and the woman's file was digitally signed off as completed autopsy. No further inquiry. Another click, and a fresh order was sent through the encrypted pipeline. Destination Romania, payment already waiting in crypto. He rarely thought about the bodies. He focused on code, signals, security layers. Still, some nights, when the world went quiet, he'd dream of cold storage rooms and nameless tags. He would wake up sweating, reaching for a screen that wasn't there. Back in the van, Sandra finished sealing Edna's chest. No blood, no trace. The kidneys were preserved in medical-grade containers, resting calmly in a cooler beside her. She sat back, staring at the woman's lifeless face. "Better used than rotting," she whispered under her breath, a mantra she had adopted long ago. Yet her chest felt tight. The old woman's face reminded her of someone she once knew, her grandmother, perhaps, before life had hardened her into what she had become. As the van pulled away, everything looked routine. No sirens, no alarms, just another forensic pickup, signed and logged. But behind the scenes a transaction had just occurred that turned death into commerce, and it was happening every single day. The numbers were rising. Over 2,000 bodies had passed through their hands across the UK, each processed, harvested, and disposed of without suspicion. No one questioned the team in white suits. They looked official. They had the badges, the forms, the quiet authority of people who belonged. But beneath that silence was something monstrous. They weren't helping solve crimes. They were committing one slowly, methodically, with surgical precision, and no one knew. No one was watching, not yet. And somewhere deep inside the van, Sandra's gaze lingered on the last photo in Edna's file. A young girl smiling beside her. Maybe a granddaughter, maybe just a memory. Sandra turned off the screen, forcing herself to forget. Erin Calloway had always wanted to work in forensics. It sounded noble, scientific, like solving puzzles to bring justice to the dead. When she got the job at MediTrace Diagnostics as a junior data clerk in Manchester, she believed she was stepping into that world. The office was sleek, the team polite but distant, and everything seemed to run with perfect efficiency. That should have been the first warning sign. Nothing ever went wrong. No delays, no corrupted files, no inconsistencies. It was too clean, too controlled, but Erin, eager to prove herself, kept her doubts locked away, telling herself she was just overthinking things. Weeks passed, she settled into her role, organizing medical reports, uploading images, filing forensic documentation. But certain things began to feel off. Files were sometimes encrypted without explanation. Medical images arrived already completed, sometimes time-stamped before the supposed autopsy had even begun. She noticed that entire case folders were edited from a remote server late at night, often minutes before being submitted to the coroner's office. She mentioned it once to her supervisor, who brushed it off with a stiff smile. "Just part of the process, Erin. Leave the forensics to the professional." But her instincts wouldn't rest. One afternoon, while clearing corrupted folders from an old hard drive, she stumbled across a file mislabeled as an audio clip. Curious, she opened it, and froze. It wasn't audio. It was a scanned customs invoice, clearly never meant to be seen by someone in her role. The words stared back at her. Refrigerated human tissue, renal specimens, to origin, Manchester. Destination, Constanța, Romania. It was dated only a week ago. No names, no bodies referenced, just weight, quantity, and tracking codes. Erin sat there, unable to breathe. The room felt colder, heavier. She clicked through more logs. Old ones, hidden beneath layers of junk data. Shipment after shipment. Different names, different cities. The pattern was undeniable. They were sending human organs out of the UK, and no one was saying a word. Fear gripped her like a fist. Should she report it? Would anyone believe her? MediTrace had contracts with half the country. Their name was trusted, respected. She was just a data clerk. She imagined the faces of the families who never knew, who buried their loved ones without knowing something had been taken. Her stomach turned. Instead of going to the police, she reached out to a journalist she followed online. Someone known for digging into medical corruption. She sent everything she had. No names, not yet. Just proof. Within days, the story broke. A front-page exposé. Are the dead being robbed? Whistleblower reveals dark secrets of private forensic firm. The backlash was immediate. Families came forward. Social media exploded with rage and disbelief. Protests flared outside public buildings. For the first time, Someone had pierced the veil of silence surrounding MediTrace. But Erin didn't feel safe. She knew too much. She was watched now. Her supervisor stopped speaking to her. Her ID card began glitching at security doors. Someone had been in her flat. Nothing stolen, just moved, slightly, as if to send a message. She packed her things that night, unable to sleep. The truth was out there, but the people behind it weren't gone. They were still out there, watching, waiting. And Erin knew, deep down, she'd never really be safe again. In the windowless office of a federal building in Washington, D.C., Special Agent Marcus Hale stared at the screen in front of him. His coffee had long gone cold, but he hadn't noticed. For weeks he had been tracing a web of shell companies, disconnected medical shipments, and suspicious death records stretching across Europe and the UK. The journalist's expose had sent tremors across the Atlantic, and something about it tugged at an old memory, a ghost from a case he thought was buried, Dr. Lance Meyer. It had been years since the Texas scandal. Meyer had vanished without a trace after his clinic was raided. Hale remembered standing in that empty operating room, everything covered in dust, except for the cold steel of a surgical table that had been wiped clean, eerily clean. At the time they had no bodies, no proof, just whispers and missing files. But now, pieces were finally starting to fit together. The MediTrace scandal wasn't a separate story. It was the sequel. Interpol had picked up the scent after the Manchester leak. A customs delay in Belgium had flagged a shipment marked as medical research materials. But when Belgian authorities opened the container, they found 2 human kidneys preserved in dry ice. No lab in Belgium had requested them. The trail led back to a UK morgue that had on paper never performed any extractions. It was like chasing shadows. But Hale was used to that. He thrived in the dark corners of international crime, where truth was buried beneath signatures and sealed crates. His team mapped out the connections, tiny, almost invisible transfers between fake companies that crisscrossed continents. Same courier firm in Leeds. The same unregistered airstrip near Cambridge. The same crypto wallet IDs pinging across Romania, Hungary, and Cyprus. All signs pointed to a single architect. Meyer had never stopped. He had simply changed masks. Hale couldn't help but feel a strange chill in his chest. It wasn't just the horror of the crimes, it was the precision, the cold, calculated intelligence behind it. Meyer hadn't made a mistake in years, until now. The customs error had exposed one of his roots. It was the kind of slip that meant he was either getting careless or planning something bigger. As Hale flipped through more files, he felt the weight of each victim. They weren't just names in a report, they were people, sons, mothers, forgotten veterans, the homeless. People who had died alone, only to be harvested like livestock. And for what? Money, power, or something even more twisted, control over life and death. An arrest warrant was finally issued. Meyer's face, aged by time and reconstructed through digital forensics, was added to Interpol's red notice. The manhunt spread to every major port and private airfield across Europe. One accomplice was found in a luxury flat in Croatia. Another was captured in a hotel in Madrid, trying to board a flight with fake documents and a briefcase full of sterilized surgical tools. But Meyer was gone. Again, Hale leaned back in his chair, staring at the map filled with pins and red strings. Every time they got close, Meyer vanished like smoke. But Hale knew men like him didn't stop. They built systems. They passed on blueprints. He feared this wasn't just about one man anymore. It was a global operation, with tentacles too deep to sever. And time was running out. The Mediterranean sun shimmered across the waves as a small white vessel drifted quietly off the coast of Sicily. On its surface, it looked like a private medical yacht, state-of-the-art, equipped for offshore research and emergency surgeries. But beneath the clean decks and medical emblems was something far darker. Dr. Lance Meyer stood at the edge of the ship, staring into the endless horizon, the salt air clinging to his skin. He had escaped justice again. The faces of his former colleagues haunted his thoughts. Sandra, arrested in Spain, Nico caught trying to hack into a Romanian server from a cheap motel. Pieces of the machine were falling apart, but Meyer remained untouched. There was no triumph in his expression, only a kind of hollow stillness. He had run for so long, worn so many masks, that even he wasn't sure where Lance Meyer ended and his aliases began. His face was altered now, surgical enhancements, contact lenses, a beard, even his voice was different. But inside, the voice that drove him remained unchanged. They tried to end me and I built something they couldn't stop. Back in the UK, public outrage had turned into fatigue. News coverage faded. The protests dulled into silence. Families were left with questions that would never be answered. Thousands of bodies buried without justice, without truth. The government initiated reforms, new oversight, stricter audits, but nothing could erase the years of betrayal. Trust had been shattered, and somewhere inside that silence, Erin Calloway sat alone in a London flat, curtains drawn, always checking the locks twice. She had exposed a monster and lost everything for it. Her job, her peace, her sense of safety. Some nights she woke up hearing footsteps that weren't there. Other nights she watched the news, hoping they'd finally say what she longed to hear. Dr. Lance Meyer captured. But that headline never came. Interpol's trail had gone cold. The last confirmed sighting was a grainy photo at a coastal clinic in Tunisia. Beyond that, rumors. A sighting in Venezuela. A bribe paid in cash in Turkey. A private island being prepared in the Pacific. But nothing concrete. No fingerprints. No slips, just ghosts and whispers. On the ship, Meyer walked the narrow halls of his floating sanctuary. He passed locked doors, filled with preserved samples, unauthorized equipment, and devices never approved by any medical board. He wasn't finished. Not yet. He still had contacts. Demand for organs was higher than ever. Rich clients didn't ask questions, they only asked for results. To them, morality was a luxury. He stopped by a refrigerated chamber, placed a gloved hand on the steel door, and closed his eyes. He didn't see organs anymore. He saw numbers, profit, legacy. The world had tried to bury him, but he had become a myth, a name spoken in fear by investigators, traffickers, and families alike. And as the sun set over the quiet sea, one truth lingered in the air like smoke. Lance Meyer was still out there, and he wasn't done. When grieving son Michael Turner discovered his father's kidneys were missing after a routine autopsy, he uncovered a terrifying truth. A fake forensic team, led by the vanished American surgeon Dr. Lance Meyer, had been harvesting organs from the dead across the UK, under the cover of legitimacy. As whistleblower Erin Calloway risked her life to expose the operation, and FBI agent Marcus Hale chased shadows across borders, one chilling question remained unanswered. How many more bodies were silently emptied while the world looked away? Welcome to the darkest crime you've never heard of.